under the influence of classical revival. And so we see like a lot of those styles in New York City, the classical buildings. But the beginning of 20th century, also the start of the modernism. So modernism basically the one thing is they want to devoid of any ornamentation or decoration, and has to be true to the structure, the material itself. So this is the administration of Tonghai University. And it's really beautiful is from architect's point of view is it actually lifts up from the ground floor, and it's also like has clear expression of structure. And because structure is used reinforced concrete, so it's different from the traditional Chinese architecture use of wood structure. So I think Ian Pei and his colleagues, they were trying to find a way to express the Chinese architecture but use the modernism's principle to do it. And we were lucky enough that under this kind of campus, this kind of environment, and we actually learned like how all these modernism's principle apply to the architecture. And I think most of people know the chapel. This is Lu's chapel. Lu was the founder of Time magazine. And basically the foundation donated this chapel. And this chapel, it's used, at that time, used the most kind of fashionable structure. It's called shell structure. Right? It's like a two straight line and form this kind of three-dimensional parabolic surface. And it actually has a very strong self-supporting structural strength. But if you walk inside, there's a river, and it actually kind of reminds you the Gothic architecture. And it's very simple, and it's like a beautiful modern architecture expression of combined like a Gothic feeling, but with the modern architecture. So when we were in school, we have class like kind of like study the great modern architecture, and we have to make models and study it because we couldn't be there, right? And we try to understand the spatial relation, how the material and all the stuff. So this building was designed by the French architect Corbusier, and Corbusier probably one of the probably greatest architect, like after Michelangelo. And he basically this house pretty much is like everything about the modern architecture. And this was built in like around 1928, so it's almost 100 years ago. It looks very new. And so I was kind of under this kind of professional background. So when I travel, I basically kind of try to go to see like those buildings we have learned from the book and try to learn more about your building. And that's kind of like decided how I plan my travel. So when I came to States, in the first semester, we have a project in Chicago. We drove from Michigan to Chicago, and like our classmates would just like, we went to the Oak Park and tried to see like everything Frank Lloyd Wright did. And this building is really ugly. I think like, I wouldn't say in the common sense, most of people would think that this is a very old ugly building, but this is like the first modern building was built in like start from 1905 to 1908. And it's like a true modern architecture using the concrete to do the space structure and everything. And also it's probably the first building kind express the modern spatial idea. So this is the inside. And this building with some of a few other rights building right now is under the review of UNESCO World Heritage. But this is Wright's his own home and the studio. And this is Frank Lloyd Wright's the probably like the most famous house, and one of the 10 greatest house in 20th century, the Falling Water near Pittsburgh. And the beauty of this building really is like it's built on top of this waterfall, and combined with the structure, but also kind of expressing the contrast between the vertical, that stone, almost like as the anchor of the everything to the ground, and then the horizontal cantilever of that balcony, and I feel like almost weightless. So it's really beautiful. And so basically, like in the beginning when I got to US, I was just trying to travel to see like every building we have learned from the book. And this is the inside of Falling Water, and you can see the stone, original stone, kind of bump it out a little bit from the floor. So this was the model I showed earlier. This is Corbusier's Villa Savoye. And it actually took 1 day trip from Paris to go there. We took train, and we get there. We have to ask people how to get there, and we walk like another 30 minutes from the train station to there. And basically, like just architects there. When we were there, probably just about 4 more people there. And the sign-in book, you can see like everybody has architectural background. But this building is also is UNESCO's World Heritage Site. So you can see like the kids kind of found like this is very interesting with ramp on the ground, on the rooftop with the roof garden, and they sort of feel like, oh, this is fun. It's very unusual. And a lot of time we try to go to find this kind of unusual architecture. We have to go through this kind of city, and it's actually interesting because it's not like most of the tourists go. And this is another building, like we actually took us a big effort to get there. It's like in the outskirts of Barcelona, and was designed by Gaudi. And I think everybody knows Gaudi's the big cathedral in Barcelona. And this is like a small chapel. And so at that time, there was no Google map, and we didn't know how to get there. And so we got a taxi, but then the taxi driver said, we have 5 people, we had to get 2 taxis. And I didn't know like how far this was. So when we got there, we basically like ran out all the cash. It's about probably just, I forgot how much money, but it's like very little, probably less than $10 in our pocket. So we say, well, that's okay. We just find an ATM to get more cash to go home. But this chapel, it looks very Gaudi, right? It's very strange. But the interesting part is he used actually all this that crooked column, twisted columns. It actually has a structural reason. With Gaudi used like the structural stress of whatever the arch, and he find a way of like how to the best get the stress of the structural force balanced together. And but it's like very unusual. And this is the inside, right? Everything's cooked. It's very Gaudi, and I had to go there because I want to know like how you express the structure using the natural structural forces to form this kind of very like irregular and in a way almost crooked structure. So after we finished the tour of the church, and we went through this small town, almost like a village, not even a town. It's like nobody lived there. Right? It's very strange. We couldn't find an ATM, and we had to eventually found somebody, and we couldn't speak in Spanish. I would try to find like where's the train station because we only had the money to take a train, and we were not sure we had enough money to take a train. And like my daughter only done 1 year Spanish at that time, and so we tried to communicate it with the villager. And eventually, my wife just say choo 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 choo, and so they understand what we were talking about. And we show the money we had, and they say, "Oh, that's enough," and then point the direction to the train. So this is quite an adventure, right? You know, sometimes I just felt like, oh, maybe I have to be careful about like taking the whole family doing this kind of trip. And I think like probably the year after this, I read an article in Architecture magazine, and it was written by an architect's wife, and she said like her husband always take them to see like all this unusual building in the unusual place, and one time they got lost. So when they got to their building, and it's all dark, and they couldn't see anything. And so her husband just got off the car and used his hand to touch the building. I think this is like really extreme. It sounds like a joke, but it's in some way true. I think like most architects like, yeah, we have done a lot of these kind of crazy things. And so after that, I kind of try to be careful or modify the trip a little bit more interesting. Like kind of interesting to me or to the family. So around the time, like sometimes we have good fun. Like in the Barcelona Gaudi's church, right? Gaudi's church really is the tradition of Spanish Baroque, because Spanish Baroque they put the decoration over decoration. It's like a accumulation or composition of all kind of ornamentation to the church, and he just make it extreme. But the kids had fun because we kind of walk up around that two towers stairs, and they thought like, wow, this is really cool. And then my son had this swing in the Gothic church. I don't know why we found that Gothic church. All the merry-go-round, we went to this Paris. I found this probably the best ice cream in Paris. And this is Gaudi's church. And this was in the mid-90s. So I think after 2000, they built the church much faster, and right now they can do the mass. But at that time, we were there with no roof at all, just basically all these spirals. And obviously in Barcelona, we have to go to see Gaudi's other buildings. And probably we spend like half of the time went through like every Gaudi's building. This is one of the apartment, Casamila. And so also in Barcelona, I had to go to this probably like the most important building in 20th century or the modern architecture. This was this architect Miss Bender designed for the 1928 World Expo in Barcelona, German pavilion, and it's basically he tried to express like almost like a weightless, no way. So all the columns, steel column he used is like cross section, like a cross section. So it's like the thinnest possible to express that column, but also the column wrapped with stainless steel. So it's almost refraction. You don't feel that weight. And this is like absolutely against how the traditional classical buildings. And this is really a monumental. And the way the space flow, it's just like a few walls, not like the classical building has a room after another room. And this is almost like at the beginning of a new era. Miss Benbrow eventually, because of the Nazi, and he came to United States, he settled in Chicago, and he has several great buildings in Chicago. And people in New York know that Seagram building on Park Avenue, that's also his sign. And so I hope this this will be more informative. And so I would try and concentrate on some of the part of the travel I had. And I think like I would talk a little bit more about the religious building, because in the ancient time, really religious building, basically human beings or dedicate all their effort to the religious building. And obviously palace also the other one, like really splendor. But because religious building has this spiritual dimension of the human thinking and thoughts. So in a way, like all the progression of this architecture in the ancient time mostly go around the religious building. So I would just talk slightly a little bit more about the religious building. And I think if we want to talk about the Western architecture, we always had to start from the Greece. Right? This is the Acropolis of Athens, and this was built after Greek defeat Persians, and this is the golden age of Athens. And so it's when we were in school, and this is like something we have to learn, thinking like this is the perfection. And I think it's almost the embodiment of the ancient Greek pursuing the perfection. And so in a way, this temple is a little bit different from typical Greek temple at that time. Was usually had 6 columns and in the front, and this one has 8. And they also like the two end columns actually tilted slightly, because to adjust the human eye to looking at the distortion. And so you almost see something like it's like perfect. So the proportion of this is something also we learn. And the temple was still had roof until something like, I think it was 18 something, because at that time Ottoman Empire, the Turk army stored their ammunition inside the temple, and the ammunition exploded, so blow away the roof. So right now we don't see a roof there. And when we were there, actually they were trying to restore the temple to a degree. And this is another building in that complex on the Acropolis. It's called Erechium. And this is a little bit unusual, is that they have the two loggia, and one side has this statue as the column. It's really beautiful. The actual statue actually right now is in the museum, and the statue as site is the replica. So from Greek or Athens, then usually we have to go back to see what's the origin of the Greek civilization. And this was in the island of Crete. Crete was the beginning of this Greek civilization, and it's probably dated back to somewhere like 2700 to 1400 BC. So it's equivalent to about, the end of their era was equivalent to China's Shang dynasty. So it was really ancient. And this palace of Knossos, and Knossos is this was, they basically excavate the site, and they just rebuild a small corner of this temple. It's quite interesting. And this is interior, and I suppose that's the throne room of King Mino. Minos, and the first king of this Minoan civilization. And in the Greek myth, right, he was the son of Zeus and Europa. And after his death, he became the judge of the dead in the underworld. So travel around the Aegean Sea, and it's kind of back to the biblical time. So we went to visit the Ephesus, and I think in the Bible, right, Paul traveled a few times to Ephesus, and Ephesus was probably the second largest city in the Mediterranean region, or at least in that Roman Empire at that time. And right now, this is unearthed. And, I think over 1,000 years, they were covered by the dirt, and then right now gradually excavated. So this was like one of the, I think it's the very wealthy person's home. And Paul could have stayed here, who knows, right? It's quite interesting. And this was a public building. It's very typical, the height of Roman Empire's style. Very sculptural, and it's very different. And Romans are like great builders. And this amphitheater was actually fairly intact, and occasionally they would have concert here, and it's still like in good shape. And actually, it's interesting because the way that acoustic design or the shape, like people on the stage, when they talk, and you can hear it very clear on the toppest tier. So around this, also this beautiful Greek islands, Santorini and Rhodes. And the Rhodes, I think, is happen in the Bible a lot. It's very beautiful islands. And this was the island Patmos, and this small church actually is where John wrote his revelations, and he died here. And so inside has a cave. It's actually a very rough cave, and we couldn't take a picture there, but it's kind of interesting. And travel around the like Greek area or region, Aegean region. Actually, you can see like the Orthodox side of the art is very different from like Roman side, Catholic side of the art. And so go to the Roman period, and probably during the Roman period, the best church ever built in the ancient time was this Hagia Sophia in Istanbul. And this was built by Emperor Justinian in 500 something AD. And so this probably was the single largest cathedral in the ancient world until much later. I forgot which one. I think it was in Spain. and but it's a engineering marble, and it was designed by a mathematician and an engineer. And the most difficult part was build that dome, because what happened was, this is the difference between the Greek side and the Roman side, or the Italian side, that they, in the Greek side, right, the main church is, we call Greek cross, right? It's kind of like it's a centralized plane, and the four arms of cross are equal length. So in a way, it's they will build a dome at the cross section, crossing point. And the reason that in the ancient church, dome has a deep meaning, because it's kind of symbolize the heaven, the sky, or the universe. And so in a way, to build a dome, it kind of has this sense of like heaven inside. And so this church, it just, like when you walked in, you just feel all about it, because the scale of it is incredible. Like at the top of the dome is about 182 feet, and so it's really tall and big, and then they have this light right around it. So in a way, when the sun gets through, you just feel like there's a kind of sacred about it, the whole thing. And at that time, they had the marble came from like entire Roman Empire. Basically, it's like the best marbles they can find. And generally, the marble is in this green and white and a little bit pinkish hue. It's just really beautiful, and you have to be there. And the sheer size of the church, just incredible. And the mosaic of this art, I don't know what happened. Like they will change back to a mosque now. But originally, after the conquer of Constantinople, they covered this with plaster. All the Christian arts were covered with plasters. And then when this became a museum, right, they gradually took the plaster out and showing like the old mosaic. Just incredible, beautiful mosaic in the church. And so in the Romans were great builders, and they invented the arch. They invented the concrete, and because of the originally Roman was a republic, and so they have a lot of these public events, and Colosseum was like one of the things that I think the ruler would entertain their citizens. And it's amazing, like the Colosseum built around, I think it's like a 30 to 50 AD, and still exists and still standing there. This can sit about 50,000 to 80,000 people. So it was like probably the largest structure in the ancient world. And you can see like they put the sand on top of the field. And so there was a kind of whatever the events have. And then the beast would store underneath, right? What we see as a basement. And then they have this almost like elevator, would take the like tiger or the lion up and to fight with the gladiator. And the other great ancient Roman structures, the Pantheon. And the Pantheon was built around was by the Emperor Hadrian, and so this dome actually is bigger than the Hagia Sophia. I think it's like 142 feet in diameters. And so the height of the dome also is like 142 feet. So it's actually like a sphere and with half dome. And the inside is really beautiful because the light comes in and the sun moves and the light moves, and then they have this kind of almost this grid showing the shadow, and the marble is just all these details are very incredibly beautiful. It also is a great engineering achievement. It actually, they have this concrete pole, so it's created this rib, and then they gradually taper the rib up thinner to the top, so to kind of reduce the weight from the top. So after Roman, there was medieval time, and the medieval time really the church kind of divided two directions, and one is kind of in this Gothic style, and basically Gothic started in France around like 12th century, and so Gothic actually only like in the France and Germany and Britain and part of Spain, just this area, and then never like really go beyond the Italy and the East. And the Gothic church really is also like they derive from like this original the church prevailed in Italy in the what's called the Christian era of Roman Empire. But then because the medieval kind of separate the Europe into like small states, and so in a way I think the travel was not that easy as today, and so the Gothic kind of limited to just the Western Europe part. And this is a cathedral in Prague, but you can see is the height of it and the lights, because it's the big differences between the Gothic and the Romanesque church. Was they open up the wall and let the lights in. And so we'll go back to Italy because it's back to like where the kind of like the beginning of the modern time, or like the Renaissance time. So usually the Renaissance time started kind of like architecturally start from this church. Obviously the art, the painting actually a little bit earlier, and the literature also started a bit earlier. And this was Santa Maria di Fiore. It was designed by Brunelleschi, and it was everybody knows Medici family in Florence at that time, so it's a lot of sponsor or money sponsored by Medici family. And the greatest, they built a church for over a long period of time. It started probably like, I remember it's like 12 something. And they tried to build this gigantic dome, and they just couldn't do it. And eventually, Brunelleschi have drawings and showing like how to do it. And it's not just structurally how to build this thing, but also like construction, how you take people up, right? Build all this brick with a temporary structure. And this dome actually, it's different from like the dome we see in Pantheon or like we have seen in Hagia Sophia. Is like semi sphere, right? It's pure half sphere. And this actually slightly elongated. So in a way, it's kind of the combination of classical dome and the Gothic of this kind of more like verticality, in a way, the combination. So this is a dome, and a dome really, as I saw this painting on top, it's really huge, and it becomes the landmark of Florence. And from any point, you'll see this dome around the Florence. And so this church was designed around the same time by this architect called Alberti. And Alberti actually wrote a book and has a great influence about the Renaissance architecture. But this church, you can see, it's a very typical medieval times Italian church, and they have the central nave with the two aisles, and so there's a procession for the ceremony and all the rituals. And so in Italy, or even in France, all the church is, we call Latin cross, right? It's like one leg of this cross is much longer. And there's a thing about between the Greek cross and the Latin cross in the church design is that the Latin cross is better for mass and procession because there's a length about it, and you walk gradually approaching the altar. But it doesn't have that same centrality of the Greek cross, and you want to have a sense of like God or heaven is within this church. It's much more difficult to achieve, and it's much easier to be achieved in the Greek cross. It's a central plane, and they simply put a dome at the center, and they'll feel that everything is about this dome and the heaven above. And this is the church that they started the idea of Renaissance is about the proportion, right? Taking back the proportion of Greek thinking. And it's like a 1:2, everything 1:1, that kind of perfect proportion built within the church. And I think the other thing is like, if you look at the right hand side, is that between the nave, right? It's nave, the space of nave is taller and the two aisles lower. So it's very difficult to deal with the facade. And Alberti can create this scroll shape, right? To kind of hold the whole facade kind of together a little bit better. And obviously Florence, you see these Donatello's David and Michelangelo's David. At that time, they were all sponsored by Medici family. And it was like the greatest time of Florence. And so talking about Michelangelo, and Michelangelo actually, we all know he's a great sculptor and also painter. But like normally, most of people don't know that he's a great architect besides like architects. And sometimes I know like one of the book say he is the greatest architect in 500 years. Right? And then the next one is the Corbusier, the one like we saw his villa. And so this time and this period we call High Renaissance. It's kind of like the later half of the Renaissance time, and it's more mature, and all this like antiquity kind of gradually rediscovered. And so this is the Capitol line in Rome, and it's one of the 7 hills of Rome. And originally in the ancient time, it's kind of very important because it's kind of located at the center of the Rome, and it's connected to the one side is the forum, and the other side is the entry gate. So when there's a kind of victory march, they will pass through this place and to the forum. And so at the time when Michelangelo designed this, right, it actually was really in a bad shape. It looks like a ruin and not taken care at all. And it was used for execution place for criminals. And so what happened was Michelangelo really designed the facade to unify all these different buildings behind this facade. He also has like the stairs goes up actually is a trapezoid shape. So from this perspective view, it actually looks kind of really longer, much longer, because you don't see that you can see the two edges parallel, and you feel like much longer. So really is the Michelangelo created this kind of movement, almost the beginning of Baroque. And so you come from this side and take the steps up, and there's two statues, right, frame that entry point. And so it kind of emphasizes that axis in a way. And the tower, right, in the middle of the axis actually is the ancient, the older building, not the addition of Michelangelo. And so these two statues, the Gemini constellation, that 2 twins. And the sculpture, I think they found from the ancient ruins, so he can use it. And then once you get up right, to the plaza, and then there's 3 sides of this building, all designed by Michelangelo to unify, to kind of form a enclosed plaza. And then in the middle of that statue is the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. And so this statue was brought back from by the Constantine, the first Christian emperor, from like one of the what's called the region of Roman Empire. And so at the Michelangelo's time, they actually found this statue like I think they found it in river or something. And so Michelangelo put it in at the center. And actually he has a pattern of this oval shape, and the statue is sit at the center. And this is like first time, before Michelangelo actually, most of people use circular shape, a lot of circles, because that's the Greek perfect shape. And so Michelangelo used a oval paving pattern, and the oval has this dynamic nature, right? It kind of stretch that circle out, and also the plaza actually is also a trapezoid shape. So it's created visual illusion. It's just almost like the example of the later urban design and how we design the space. So this is much easier to see, like the shape actually has this oval shape, and the stair leading up is a trapezoid shape. The plaza is a trapezoid. So it's emphasized that axis, and this axis becomes the Baroque urban design's principle of the movement and the axis. So Michelangelo really is a great architect, and because the way how he look at it, you look at his sculpture or his painting, it's all dynamic, right? there's a lot of like art collections. These 3 buildings now are all museums. It's a great place to visit. That's the emperor. And you can see the pattern, right? It's kind of almost a star, this pattern, and it radiate out and in this oval shape. And the emperor's statue's finger point to the direction of St. Peter's Cathedral. And so in a way, Michelangelo actually reversed the importance of this Capitoline Plaza, because in the ancient time, the more important direction actually is point to the foreign. And now, like after this reconstruction, the front becomes the back, and then the St. Peter's Cathedral becomes the front, right? It's related to the St. Peter, and it kind of mark different era, like in the Christian and the old Roman Empire. And so the other one is the great work of Michelangelo is the St. Peter Basilica. And actually, original St. Peter's Basilica was before Renaissance time. Actually, it was a Greek cross. A Latin cross shape. It's very similar to the one we just saw that Alberti's church in Florence. And this is a place where they buried St. Peter here. And so the St. Peter was buried under the intersection of that cross, right, in the old basilica. And then when the new Pope in the Renaissance time start to have they start to replan the new cathedral. So it actually went through 4 different architects. The first one is Bramante, and it's actually a great architect in the Renaissance time too. And but then the fourth one was on Michelangelo, and because original design was too big, too expensive, and they just couldn't afford it. So eventually, Michelangelo kind of reduce the size slightly smaller and make it much more compact, but also like actually much better than what was before. And so the church actually they changed from like original Latin cross to the Greek cross, but because the ceremonial needs, they actually functional needs the Latin cross type of floor plan. So Michelangelo actually add a section out, and so you enter actually you feel like they can satisfy the function of the whatever the church ceremony or the rituals, but also have this like central plane or central plane church. That feeling. So the dome actually is a center. And Michelangelo also like make the dome a little bit taller. So it's slightly like elongated instead of like original design was more the semi-sphere. And this dome pretty much like was copied everywhere, like Washington, our Congress also kind of copy of this kind of style. And the same thing is the St. Peter's tomb is still in the same location, right? No touch. So when they build this new St. Peter's, has to make sure that's the center. And right now, if you see this, right, this is underneath of this gray bronze sculpture is the St. Peter's tomb. And actually, Vatican has a lot of great art collections, and you will be surprised that from like today's fundamentalist viewpoint, they collect a lot of arts which is pagan or like. But I think in the Renaissance time, the view is very different, and they actually would allow Michelangelo paint all the in the Sistine Chapel. Everybody's naked because they think that human body was created by God, and it's the perfect thing in the world. And so this was the Pietà by Michelangelo. And also you can see that this is the School of Athens by Raphael. It's like at the center, two people. One is Plato and Aristotle. And actually, he also painted Michelangelo here as a philosopher. And Raphael is here. This guy is the Raphael himself, also like as an ancient Greek philosopher. And then, so in the same time of this the Pisa cathedral and the tower, and like we all know, like the tower, because it's like everybody think it's the wonder of, but actually it's a group of three buildings: the tower, and then the Battista, and the cathedral. And this cathedral was typical medieval time of Italian church architecture. So you can see like the center is nave, like really tall, and then two sides the aisle, and then they have this Greek cross floor plans. The details like really beautiful. It's the height of Pisa's culture. But after Florence rised, that and eventually Florence took over Pisa, and so they in a way they just stayed in that medieval time, and then never like move beyond to the Renaissance. And then the other great city for Renaissance is Venice. And Venice really, because it's a seaport, right? It's a merchant city. It's a republic, and they have a lot of that merchant relation with Ottoman Empire. And so in a way, they actually much more what's called worldly. And so this is San Marco. And during the Renaissance time, they redesigned the San Marco, and so make it much more organized. And these two columns were from Constantinople, and then the two statues on top. One is there. The winged lion is the symbol of Vienna, and the other is their patron saint of Venice. I think it's Saint Theodore. So this facade actually is like high Renaissance style. It's basically they redo it from the original medieval facade. It's a library. And then in the San Marco, the Doge Palace actually also has a lot of art. And this painting was by Tintoretto. Tintoretto is high Renaissance painter, but it actually it's we call kind of mannerism, and also like the beginning of Baroque, right? It's very dynamic. So the one he painted for the Last Supper is like a diagonal across the canvas, and very different from Da Vinci's The Last Supper. And this one called Paradise, and it was a competition, and he won, got the commission. And so go to Venice, we have to go to see building by Palladio. And I don't know you heard Palladio, but Andre Palladio is the most influential architect to the Britain and the United States. And like Thomas Jefferson's his own house, or like the University of Virginia, or basically is the Palladian type of architecture. And the Palladio also is in this high Renaissance. As you can see, it's very different from Michelangelo. And so it has very little decoration. The whole thing is white. And it's a Latin cross, but he has this dome in the middle. And he basically kind of redo the inside and add the facade to the front. But the facade is like also taking almost a free composition of classical elements, like the pediment, the column, but it like have a two pediments right into just position of each other. And so he actually has a beautiful way of solving that, the relation of nave and the aisle. So we went to Vicenza to see more Palladio's architecture, because Vicenza has about 20 some buildings designed by Palladio. It's a small town, and it's about an hour from Venice. And this is one of the building, the Palazzo Riccardi. And the beautiful part is Palladio actually, the best part of his architecture or the design is the proportion and the way how he used the size of the column. The facade kind divided to tripartite type of facade, and then like the loggia of the ground floor and the balcony on the top. It's very Italian, but also like very modern, and it's how the building kind of related to the street, and how he used the classical elements. It becomes like very easy to copy, and so that's why, like, especially in the classical revival time and in the English-speaking world, it's like widely copy his style. And so to this kind of small town, obviously there's a fun about seeing the local stuff. And this is another building designed by Palladio. It's it actually also from an old building and refacaded, and so he kind of put the classical elements, the order, the proportion into it, make it really beautiful building. And so we're back to Rome, and because I want to go into more the Baroque time, like right after the High Renaissance. And so the Baroque church really in Italy was kind of influenced by the religious war between the Catholics and the Protestant. And so the Pope kind of convened a meeting called the Council of Trent. And so from there, they decided have to use the art and the music to promote that the emotion of religious feeling, the mystic feeling of the religion. And so that kind of idea would influence the church design. And this church was kind of old, and then was at the facade by Della Porta. But the inside is just the typical of Baroque cathedral. And so you look at the ceiling, and this it's like the angel and all the figure in the heaven. It's all coming out. It's like a three-dimensional, and outside of this, the architectural structure, and some of the shadow you see, right? It looks like there's a light create a shadow on the board, but it actually is painting. They painted like a shadow. So in a way, it's creates this emotion in the building. And the character of Baroque church is the movement, and they try to kind also like from the building facade. It's very different from like static beauty of Renaissance, and this is the facade is like concave or convex curve like play together. And this is a small church, and in a very small plaza street. It's a very we took about 20 minutes all around, just couldn't find it. Eventually found it just in that place. And this is another great Baroque church designed by this architect called Baromini. And generally, this kind of church just architect visited because it's not a famous like St. Peter's. But the church outside is same thing. It's like a continuous of this concave, convex curve, and at the corner and everything kind of like almost like you feel that the movement of the building itself. It's like building can move. And the inside, it's completely different. We used to see is this circular dome as center, and this is oval dome. And actually, if you look at the floor plan, the floor plan actually is like two triangle and a two circle. So the two circle form this oval, and that becomes the oval of that center dome. And so in a way, this is a centralized church, but also it's elongated church, so you can do the ceremony or the procession much easier. So it's very interesting, and you can see like the anti-bridge is continuous connect, and then kind keep on moving, but integrate all the geometry shape it together. And this is the oval church designed by Bernini, and it's a simple, just one simple room, single room, and with oval shape. And so it's a character of Italian Baroque style. And a lot of this decoration you can, and Bernini himself is a great sculptor. So usually there's a kind of the sculpture, and the sculpture using the light to kind of give you this kind of almost mystic feeling. So Baroque actually, each region is a little bit different. So French Baroque, Italian Baroque, or like German Baroque, they are all these different. And we actually took extra effort to go to visit this Western Palace of Würzburg in the Bavaria region. And so this in Germany, Germany was actually unified like in the 18 something, right? So it's the second half of 19th century, and before that was all this kind like these small states, and it's sort of similar to Italy, and so each one has their own character. And this one has a really beautiful garden behind the palace. But my real intention is to see this church, and this is German Baroque, but it's kind of the later phase of the Baroque, and it's almost Rococo in a way. And so you can, this is the chapel within the residence palace, designed by the German architect Newman. And you can see like the columns like twisted, almost like Rubens painting. And then the decoration is very rococo. It's like it's white, gold, that kind of stuff. And then if you look at like the altar, the statue, and the lights coming from, and it almost like give you that kind of sense of holy and the mystic feeling of it. And then the shape is kind of also keep on like moving, right? It's always curved in and out, in and out. So we took time to see another Newman's great building, and it actually is like we had to take a train to a small place, and then we got off the train station and we had to walk like 30 minutes, passing the field. It's a beautiful countryside, and eventually see this church. So the church outside, it's a little bit Gothic, right, with these two towers on the sides, but then the front really is a classical composition. But inside it's just very, it's so beautiful. I couldn't, you have to be there just to feel it. You feel like the whole thing is like a porcelain. It's like unreal because the white marble and the white painting on plaster with the gold, very rococo. And the geometry is so complex. Like if you look at the floor plan, and actually the upper one is a floor plan, is like a 3 different oval together. And where the intersectional cross is not like typical of a dome. It's actually the intersection of oval. And then if you look up the ceiling, it actually it's like it's easier to see from the plane, but if you look up the arch actually tilted in, slightly similar to like the way how the later stage of Gothic architecture. But what's great about is that the light comes in with the church of this white color, and so it's like a reflection of the lights. It just feels like everything is so beautiful and almost unreal like. And this is almost like the architecture has all these counterpoints and almost like a fugue of the way like it demands your understanding, and it actually takes a lot of time. I try to, as an architect, take time, like sit there, just try to figure out the geometry, the relation, that kind of stuff. And so anybody take picture here, it just looks beautiful. It's a bit like you are in a photo studio with a lot of these reflectors, and the light's just incredible on the face. And then we walk home through this small village of southern Germany. It's really beautiful. And sometimes we do like the travel, we just have to, one is like find like a really good restaurant. And also the setting of restaurant is also important because the architecture is important part of the trip. So like these 2 pictures on the left are in Rome, and so the one in the cellar is just under this great old brick structure. It has a lot of character. The one in the right is in Morocco face, and has this, it's a beautiful house, big house, and with all this decoration of the Moorish style decoration. And food is good part of the trip too. The one in the left, and this is a steak house Vienna, and it's like the best steak soup I had. The steak came out from the soup, and it's really tender. I almost feel like better than the barbecue steak, but the soup is just incredible. And I don't know what I try to recreate it, just impossible. Tajin in Morocco, and then sometimes we try to find like hotel has more the character of the local culture. So like the one on the left is in Prague, and Prague in this around like 10th century between the 18th and between the 19th and 20th century, actually it's a great place for the art novel. So it's a lot of that kind of style, and this hotel is just restored. It's really beautiful. And this hotel in Morocco has this local flavor. It's quite interesting. And then sometimes we have to go to, like, this is Vienna Opera House. I got to go because I heard so much about it. Or this is in Prague, the orchestra, Symphony Hall. And this is basically I just want to see the architecture. It's a great Art Nouveau style. And then sometimes you have to see certain painting. This was by Klimt, the keys. And it's see the real building is different from the print. There's two lovers and on this patch of flowers, and then hold together, almost like merged together. And this is the lady. Klimt did a lot of this stuff. And then sometimes we just want to see, like, the history, the urban design, or the city developed in the old time. So we actually drove through this, it's called romantic route in southern Germany. So this is one of the town, Rosenberg. It's like from the fairy tale, but I guess fairy tale was written by people here. And this is another town, Würzburg. We went to see the palace residence. And then Fusen, like almost the end of that romantic route. And then this is a Neuschwanstein, right? The one we call kind of the Disney's castle was kind of based on this, and this was built by this tragic king Ludwig II, the last king of Bavaria. And so he was really into Wagner's opera, and so he wants to build something based on this kind of notion, because this era, the 19th century, was this romantic period. And so there's a romantic notion of medieval time, right? And so he basically, and he loved the opera, Wagner's opera, and he basically built this castle. Was not designed by architect, but designed a stage designer. And so you can imagine, like, this basically is a drama. It's not a real place. And it cost so much. Eventually, I think he died. He only slept here for 11 nights, stayed here like 182 days only. And when he died, it was not finished. And so eventually they finished. They just opened to public, get a lot of money and to finish it. But it's really beautiful. The setting, the architecture is nothing. It's just kind of almost like a fake in a way. And the old castle actually is much better. But the setting is incredible. It's on the top of the hill, and with the surroundings and the lake. right? It's just really beautiful. And then Salzburg is nearby. It's worth a bit visit. And then besides the Europe, sometimes we also go to like other, can call it exotic place, but it's really like to see the different culture, because in some ways, architect right now, it's more the, we practice throughout the world. And so we have office in Dubai. And I remember many years ago, we had a university in Libya. And we did a lot of research about Middle Eastern architecture and cities. So this is the Sahara. And we had to stay a night in the tent in Sahara, and it's really wonderful experience. You can see the entire Milky Way at night. And this is the Shafshawut. They usually call Blue City. I think they painted blue because they think that they thought the blue can scare the evil spirit away. But it's really beautiful, and the way how I think in that part of the world, right, they build a city much tighter, closer. It could be the temperature, the much hotter sun, but it's built on the hill. It's just really incredible. And this city face, it's probably the most interesting city in Morocco, and it has many hundred years. It's a long history there, and it's a typical type of Middle Eastern city, and we call the Lebanese type of city. Right? It's like a maze. You get into the street, you can get lost. Anybody from outside, you can easily get lost because the street is very narrow, and they kind of winding and they're not really straight. But it's really interesting. And you can see like in a narrow street, they have donkey and people walk and all this stuff. And basically the entire city is impossible to have car. And the other like Moscow place with kind of architecture is the Siem Reap in Cambodia. And this amazing small country and a very tragic country actually had a great glory time. And at that time, the height of the Khmer kingdom was they had the territory all the way to, they included Thailand and Malaysia, and so it's much larger. And at that time, they were in, this is Hindu temple before Cambodian changed to Buddhism. The stonework is incredible. It's hard to believe like such a small country and they can spend like such an effort, manpower to build all these incredible temples. Right? And this is all Hinduism's temples, Hindu gods. But the sculpture it's just very beautiful. And this is Taprom is the temple they actually shot the movie Tomb Raider here. So you can see like all these trees outgrown on top of the temple. Right now they are kind of trying to restore, and the team restoring the temple's team is from India. So it's, they understand the Hinduism's temple, and they actually want to keep some of this tree, the state of ruin. So it's a kind of balance between the ruins and the restoration. It's kind of very interesting. And obviously China is a great place to go to travel. But go to China it's tricky because during Cultural Revolution, a lot of stuff were destroyed. And so sometimes in China, you go to a place that a temple has like 1,200 years old, and you see the statue is just so ugly. It's a modern creation, we know. You just say, But so this is called Huangshan in China. Almost like if you don't go here, you don't understand why like a Chinese landscape painting will paint that way, and it's breathtaking. And this Wingang grottos in the northern China has this huge statue of Buddha. It's very interesting to visit. And then this in most of the temple in China were like either they call remodel, but it's like a terrible restoration, or were destroyed by during the Cultural Revolution and rebuild something just completely different from the ancient. And this one is unusual. I think this is in the northern Shanxi province, and this is the statue from Song Dynasty. It's a clay statue, but you can tell immediately it's from the older time. Right? It's just so elegant, so beautiful, and this kind showing like the women in the court. So they all wear dress up, and has, each one has different expression. And this is another one. It's called Hanging Temple. It's just like this temple on the cliff, and it's already like I think I forgot. It's like somewhere 1,500 years old. Obviously, they would restore from time to time, but it's a wooden structure and built on the cliff. So it's just incredible. The sight of seeing this building like on that cliff is really like unbelievable. And the other place was to visit is Tibet, and Tibet actually take a little bit effort because you have to get a special Tibet entry permit to go there, and the altitude is tough, and it takes a few days to get used to that kind of high altitude. But this place, the Potala Palace, probably has the best and the Buddhist art collection, all the artifacts, because I think like it's 1,000 years of Buddhist artifacts, and it's been collected here. And right now it's a museum after Dalai Lama left. And they kind of have a separate, like white color is the administrative office, and yellow was the where they teach, right, the learning place, and then the red color is the worship place. But architecture in Tibet is very different, has its own flavor. And this is the Machu Picchu in Peru, and it's one of the modern, one of the called new 7 wonders of the world. And nobody knows why Inca built this place as such a remote, isolated place. And it takes a little bit of effort to get there, but it's not about architecture, it's about the setting. And sometimes we study architecture, it's not just the architecture, it's the setting, how you like place the building at the best place and relate it to the environment. And sometimes we just say, we are tired of the architecture, just go to see landscape. And New Zealand is like the one perfect place to see landscape only. And this is the tree of Wanaka. And this lake has these mineral deposits, so the water is different color. It's a little bit unreal. And then you can get to the glacier. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation that took us to look at the world and follow your footsteps. there's I'll open a pool, just a little questionnaire, one question, to see what people think, and also after that we have a brief Q&A, and any questions you have you can ask architect Weichi. So I think I have a little pool. Oh, I can't open it. It says inactive. It's okay. Why don't I open the Q&A session? Anyone has any questions? You can unmute yourself. Either that, or if you want to type in a chat group, you're free to type in a chat group. Anyone has any questions?
Yes, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
I didn't hear very well about the name of a beautiful, beautiful church that has white marble, that it looks very unreal. It has three oval shape in the structure. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think I tried to write down the name is Vierz.
Wiesenheligen.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
here. Wiesenheligen.
Okay, and is it in Morocco?
No, it's in Würzburg, Germany.
Oh, Germany. Okay. Oh, thank you.
You planning to go there next time?
Yeah, it's really, really unreal. It's very beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah, the feeling is very different from like any church I have been. And because a lot of church, you can feel like the column, the arch, the vault, all the stuff. This thing is everything kind of merged together, and then they kind of play, almost like a music in a way. And just I walk in just speechless, because actually I had seen this from the slide, the picture. We actually taught this building like in the school, and so I knew the building. I knew the building looks like inside, like from the two-dimensional building. But once walk in, it just like was completely shocked, like how beautiful this is.